Do you remember the sound of sneakers hitting a polished floor, the defiant spirit in every leap, the raw energy that defined a generation? For many of us, that soundtrack of the early 80s was the voice of a fierce young man named Leroy Johnson, the street-smart kid who couldn't read but could dance like a god. The show was fame, and Leroy was the cultural earthquake it needed. But the real-life story of Gene Anthony Ray, the electric dancer who embodied Leroy, is one Hollywood would never film. It's a tragic contradiction, a talented role model for young men of color, celebrated globally, whose biggest battles weren't on the dance floor, but in quiet, desperate corners of his own life. We watched him conquer the stage, yet off-screen, a $400,000 house he bought was intentionally set ablaze, his family was caught in a major drug scandal, and his brilliance was slowly being eclipsed by addiction and the silent threat of disease. This is not a story about applause. This is about the devastating cost of sudden fame. How did a star who inspired millions end his life struggling with quiet demons and a lonely diagnosis, far from the spotlight he earned? The man the world knew as Leroy Johnson was born Gene Anthony Ray in Harlem, New York, on May 24, 1962. To his family, he was simply Tony. He emerged from a tight-knit but tumultuous environment where his relatives were heavily involved in the neighborhood's street life. Yet, even from the age of 3 or 4, Tony showed a love for movement. His family saw the spark and consciously shielded him from the hard realities of their own existence, choosing instead to focus his formidable energy on something positive, his natural gift for dance/dancer. He found his first inspiration not in the local halls, but in the grand, sweeping performances of figures like Ben Vereen, famously known as Chicken George from Roots. This early influence set the stage for an ambition that felt both artistic and deeply rooted in the culture he came from. Gene Anthony Ray's youth was defined by the block parties and dance battles that were the lifeblood of New York's urban landscape. Here, his raw talent first exploded into public view. He was unafraid, often joining the girls in their competitive dance circles. When the neighborhood boys would tease or joke, he didn't hesitate, he would fight them. He carried the fierceness of the streets in every muscle, defending his passion with his fists if necessary, a trait that gave him a reputation as wild, trained to go, and fearless. His talent eventually earned him acceptance into Manhattan's prestigious School of Performing Arts. This was a crucial moment, a chance to channel his raw power into professional craft. However, the structure and discipline of the school collided violently with the untamed spirit of the boy from Harlem. His notorious anger issues surfaced almost immediately, and he was expelled during his first year. The rumor, later noted by his mentor Debbie Allen, suggested he had physically slapped a teacher, a defining act of rebellion that haunted him. In a twist of destiny that seemed ripped from a screenplay, opportunity came knocking in the form of a movie audition. The film, initially called Hot Lunch but later titled Fame, was based on the very school that had rejected him. He missed the first audition day, and it was only through the insistence of his friends, some of whom had already been cast, that Gene Anthony Ray finally went to the set. He showed up merely hoping to be an extra dancer. Instead, his friends urged him to try out for the role of Leroy Johnson, the street-smart, illiterate teenager. They knew the part was meant for him. In real life, Gene Anthony Ray he was Leroy Johnson. When the producers and directors saw him, they were instantly sold. He was the perfect, raw fit, even replacing the kid who had already been cast. They learned he had already won the Best Male Disco Dancer award at New York's Roseland Ballroom and was an accomplished break dancer. Louis Falco, the film's choreographer, was electrified. Falco stated that Jean Anthony Ray uncovered something in him he hadn't witnessed before. Here was a naturally gifted artist with no formal training, a talent so immense it defied explanation. Falco compared him to the legendary Fred Astaire, validating the raw, unpolished genius that Harlem had forged. The casting was complete on his 17th birthday when they called to offer him the role. When Fame was released on May 12, 1980, it was an instant smash, grossing over $42 million worldwide on a modest $8.5 million budget. It won multiple Academy and Golden Globe Awards, including Best Original Song for the iconic Fame. Jean Anthony Ray, playing Leroy Johnson, had leaped from the block parties of Harlem straight onto the global stage, forever cementing his place as an undeniable force in dance/dancer history. The movie's success quickly translated into a television series, cementing Fame as a global cultural phenomenon. While only 4 original cast members returned, including Lee Carrere, Debbie Allen, and, most crucially, Jean Anthony Ray, his presence was the electrifying core that carried the show's spirit. Though initially cancelled by NBC after just 2 seasons due to low ratings in the US, the immense international demand ensured its survival. MGM and LBS Communications quickly syndicated the show for 4 more seasons, recognizing that overseas, Fame was a runaway hit watched by millions. The international response was unprecedented. The album, The Kids from Fame, hit #1 on the UK charts for 12 weeks, and songs like High Fidelity and Star Maker became top 10 singles. When the cast went on tour in the UK, the media reported a level of hysteria they hadn't witnessed since the days of the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. It was immediately clear who the main attraction was. Jean Anthony Ray, embodying the raw, streetwise energy of Leroy Johnson, had the star quality everyone came to see. He became much more than a character, he was a groundbreaking role model. In an era where men of color performing ballet or modern dance was rare on screen, Jean Anthony Ray made it cool. His unique look, the cornrow braids, the high-energy style, the fierce confidence, set a trend and validated dance/dancer as a powerful form of masculine expression. His popularity soared to levels that transformed him into a global sex symbol. The sheer volume of his fan mail was staggering. He received approximately 17,000 letters a day and needed to hire 2 secretaries just to manage the correspondence. This was the pinnacle of his fame, a dazzling contradiction to the rough, difficult world he came from. Yet, even at his peak, the friction between his street persona and Hollywood discipline was constant. He developed a deep, almost mother-son relationship with co-star Debbie Allen, who became his trusted mentor. She protected him, knowing his volatile temper. This relationship was put to the test when he crossed a boundary while performing, grabbing her inappropriately. Her reaction, a shocking slap, sent him into a rage. He smashed mirrors, broke doors, and tore up the dressing room. The incident illustrated the profound struggle of Jean Anthony Ray, a genius in motion, yet deeply troubled and unable to control his instincts. Many producers and directors were reportedly scared of him, as he was quick to lash out and curse if angered. The line between the explosive Leroy Johnson and the actual person was dangerously thin. The very qualities that made him a captivating dancer, the intensity, the raw emotion, also threatened to consume him, foreshadowing the inevitable collision with the darker forces in his life. The dazzling heights of fame quickly gave way to a series of personal crises that shattered the illusion of Gene Anthony Ray's glamorous life. The first tragedy struck close to home, tinged with a devastating hint of racial malice. After he bought a luxurious $400,000 house in a predominantly white neighborhood of Rockland County, New York, the property was intentionally set on fire. Firefighters reported smelling gasoline and noted that all four sides of the house were burning, a clear sign of arson. Though no one was ever convicted, the fire was heavily rumored to be racially motivated, a cruel reminder that for Gene Anthony Ray, success could not buy safety or acceptance. This external assault was compounded by an internal collapse within his family. That same year, a major drug bust rocked the Ray family. According to police, his mother, his grandmother, 3 aunts, 3 uncles, and 14 others were all arrested in a large drug sting involving heroin and cocaine. The director of Fame, Alan Parker, later stated that he had to be careful approaching Ray because his mother was allegedly dealing drugs during filming on the set. While Gene Anthony Ray was never implicated in the drug dealing, the scandal was a tremendous emotional burden. He stood by his mother, attending every court hearing, until she was eventually sentenced to 15 years in prison. The anchor of his life was gone. The pressure of maintaining the image of Leroy Johnson while battling these brutal real-life events proved too much. He began to spiral out of control. Alcoholism and drug use worsened drastically, reportedly using drugs in between shots on the set. His erratic behavior and chronic absenteeism became unsustainable. He missed nearly 100 days of shooting and rehearsals, leading the production staff to first suspend him and then, eventually, fire him from the very show that had made him famous. The official reason stemmed from his unreliability and drug use, but some of the cast members, like Lee Carreri, suggested the low compensation on the show may have driven some actors to look for supplemental income or seek escape. Fired and facing a shattered reputation, Ray retreated. He spent months at home, sedentary and binge-eating, until he realized he had gained so much weight that he could no longer fit into his regular clothes. He described looking in the mirror and seeing the fattest pig on earth. This shock served as a painful wake-up call. He channeled his discipline as a dancer into a desperate effort to reclaim control, changing his diet and working out for 2 months straight until his old pants, once impossible to pull past his thighs, fit again. However, the damage was done. After Fame ended in 1987, Gene Anthony Ray left America, seeking work in Europe, appearing in Italian TV series and British stage productions. Yet, even there, his troubles followed him. In Milan, he was arrested for stealing wine and attacking 2 men who taunted him, though the charges were dropped. Rumors, tragically close to the truth, began to circulate in the British press that he had died from AIDS. In 1995, he finally admitted that he was HIV positive but denied the advanced diagnosis of AIDS. He openly acknowledged his severe alcohol addiction and described himself as a frantic partygoer. The high-energy star who had once electrified millions was now simply fighting for his own survival. For a time, the world knew Gene Anthony Ray as a triumphant success story, the ultimate American dream played out in leg warmers and raw kinetic energy. Yet, his journey abroad painted a starkly different picture of a troubled artist struggling to maintain relevance and sobriety. After his abrupt departure from Fame in the U.S., he found temporary refuge and employment in Europe, securing roles in an Italian TV series and appearing in the ill-fated British stage production of Carrie. The fact that the famed TV series continued overseas for 4 more seasons, long after NBC cancelled it due to low domestic ratings, underscored his massive global appeal. In the UK, his fame rivaled that of the biggest music acts. But his escalating personal problems soon overshadowed his talent, leading to public incidents like the arrest in Milan for theft and assault. These events created a public narrative far darker than the scripted struggles of Leroy Johnson. The tragic climax of his private battle arrived when rumors circulated that he had died of AIDS. In 1995, Jean Anthony Ray took the courageous step of confirming that he was HIV positive, though he denied having full-blown AIDS at the time. This acknowledgement added a layer of profound tragedy, placing his struggle firmly within the context of the 1980s AIDS crisis that deeply impacted the arts community. His old life offered a lifeline through his mentor, Debbie Allen, who cast him in a cameo role in the film Out of Sync, 1995, a brief return to the industry that had once embraced and then discarded him. He also appeared in Eddie, 1996, and a few commercials. His final major public appearance came at the 2003 Fame Remember My Name reunion documentary. During this time, he spoke frankly about the environment on the show, claiming that staff sometimes supplied young cast members with drugs to keep them working long hours, a shocking admission that contextualized his own struggles. It was the final, unvarnished truth offered by the man who made dance/dancer a universal language. Just months after his candid appearance at the Fame reunion, a final blow struck. In June 2003, Jean Anthony Ray suffered a stroke. He died on November 14, 2003, at the age of 41, due to complications from the stroke and AIDS. Jean Anthony Ray never formally discussed his sexuality throughout his career. He was described in his obituary as someone who flamboyantly brushed aside any questions about it. He simply existed as an unapologetic, intensely gifted dancer. His death, tragically linked to the AIDS crisis that devastated the arts community in the 80s and 90s, was a quiet end for a star who had burned so brightly and loudly. His powerful legacy is not defined by his struggles, but by his impact. Jean Anthony Ray was a true pioneer, a pivotal role model for urban youth and, specifically, for young men of color. He made it acceptable, even cool, to embrace the discipline of ballet and formal dance alongside the rhythm of the streets. He inspired a generation to see the stage, not the street, as the ultimate arena for battle and triumph. The story of Leroy Johnson was scripted, but the turbulence of Jean Anthony Ray's life was the tragic, unscripted reality of sudden fame. He showed the world the immense beauty and power of raw, untrained talent, yet he paid an unbearable price for the pressure, the loneliness, and the dark temptations that followed the spotlight. We must remember him not as the addict or the troublemaker, but as the revolutionary artist who redefined what a black dancer could be. His work deserves lasting recognition. If Jean Anthony Ray's powerful dance/dancer legacy touched you, and if you believe he deserves to be honored for inspiring millions, especially as a role model, we urge you to type Leroy Johnson in the comments below. Let his name be spoken as loudly as the applause he once commanded. Rest in peace, Jean Anthony Ray.